So a bit about iCoTech then is we're a Microsoft implementation partner, a silver partner that specializes in configuring Microsoft solutions mainly for UK government, but also private sector SMEs and blue chip companies. We tend to focus mainly on the Project Online and Project for the Web products, along with Power BI, having implemented those in a number of large organizations successfully, people like Bays and Bettis & Taylor's, Yorkshire Tea. So we've also recently developed a new product that is based on a Power App that utilizes Project for the Web, which is a sort of low-cost solution that provides a base product for someone who really just wants to basically get away from Excel and move to software. But this also, it grows with you, and you can build on it as you mature as an organization, as you move up the maturity model. We obviously do also implement all the other products like Dynamics, Teams, SharePoint, Office 365, etc. So the other side of the business then, my side is change consulting. So a more recent venture for us, but obviously backed by the experience in many different companies. I myself worked in places like Wesleyan Financial Services, Bupa Global, Dyson Technology, and Bays, the Department for Business Energy and Industrial Strategy, where we are at the moment. So within change consulting, our main focus at the moment is the change management, ensuring that the solutions that we deliver on the other side of the business land successfully, are properly adopted by the users, and people are just brought along that change journey to make sure they get the best value out of the tools that we provide them with. So along with the change management, then we also do the PMO consultancy. So anything from a diagnosis and improvement recommendations through to a full PMO design and implementation. We've got the program rescue, so really rescuing big programs that are heading off track and getting them back to green. And what Brendan is here to talk about today is the assurance and the program board advisory service. So where the assurance really comes into play is whether you're not sure if you're on the right track or you just want a fresh perspective on your approach. We do a full review of your processes and controls, governance, making sure they're at the right level for what you're doing, and ensure you've got all the right governance and artifacts needed for success. And if you haven't, then we either provide you with an action plan or execute the improvements ourselves. I think the difference between that and the board advisory is, I guess the board advisory is one step above the assurance review, and that it's focused on your whole transformation department rather than one individual program. So we'd attend your key boards, your portfolio boards, change boards, etc., and basically provide an outside perspective on strategy and direction, whilst assessing and advising on program effectiveness, among other things. So the point in that really is to get you confident that your portfolio as a whole is heading in the right direction and will achieve your sort of overall goals and vision. So hopefully that provides some context on who we are and what we do. And Brendan is going to talk to you through some great stuff on that. So if I can hand over to Brendan now, I hope you all enjoy it.
Thank you, Mitch. Just going to share my screen. Hopefully you'll all be able to see it. Good afternoon. I'm Brendan. I'm going to be talking to you today about successful P3M change initiatives, why independent assurance will help. Obviously linking into some of the things that iCoTech do and potentially could do for you. A little bit about me. My most recent contract was as a program manager in a business transformation portfolio area in a social housing organisation based in Newport. I'm also very much involved in community development projects and programs. I started out as an academic and did some consultancy work while still an academic for APM, setting up their RPP, Registered Project Professional verification systems. And then from the inception of that program, which was around about 2010 through to 2014, I was the lead verifier. I continue as an assessor and I'm still sort of doing portfolios and things coming my way. And I also work with APM on setting up their project professional qualification, which has just been relaunched into version 2. And it's the equivalent to the APMP qualification, well, just above the APMP qualification that has also been refreshed. My background is academic, and I've been involved as a senior lecturer, principal lecturer, head of department. But whilst I was doing all of that, I was kind of validating MSc project management programs and also working with a range of different organizations to get project management qualifications off the ground. And I've worked with the other big professional body, with the BCS, PromsG, on their committee, as well as kind of launching articles and things. So hopefully kind of today I'll give you some insights into the sorts of things that I've been doing, as well as how this links into assurance and what it could do for you. So I'm going to talk about governance and assurance for P3M, making sure we all understand what P3M is. Also talking about controls and mechanisms such as the APM toolkit for measuring assurance. I'm going to look at the importance of an independent perspective on assurance. And I'm going to talk about how this all links together through benefits realization management. And then I'm going to talk about the strategic alignment piece, which is one of the board advisory services that iCoTech offer. And there'll be plenty of opportunity for questions towards the end of the presentation. So please feel free to kind of type them into the chat box, but we'll deal with them at the end if that's okay with you. So P3M, projects, programs, portfolios, we all have an understanding of what we think they are, but for APM as a professional body, they describe all of these as change initiatives, and they have a number of different things that they do, but most of that is encompassed in the body of knowledge, which was refreshed last year and has been a key part of all the qualifications and refreshes of the various products that they have this year. And I've been involved in, writing exam papers, in assessing various people for their competencies throughout my most recent career. But we all understand that, to deliver projects and programs and change, we have individual competence and professionalism. So it's the people that do the actual delivery. Ultimately, we have them working in teams. So their performance and how well they work together is really, really important. And all that fits into the context of organizational processes and the tools and methods that you use as part of your delivery processes. I have no idea who's on the audience today, so there are likely to be people from different backgrounds, different organizations with different levels of skills and competence, and the organizations you work for are likely to be at different levels of maturity, as mentioned by Mitch earlier. That's the diagram in the bottom right. Some organizations are just starting out on that journey, and others are quite well established in terms of what they do. But the important thing is that organizations appreciate where they are and what they need to take the next step in terms of their project management maturity. In terms of the P's in P3M, well, portfolio management, I'm assuming I'm talking to people who are at board level today and people who are interested in the strategic side of things. And portfolios are there to deliver the alignment of objectives. So they're all about prioritizing projects and programs and aligning these with business strategy. The people who are responsible for managing portfolios are typically C-suite, so kind of director level, people with good solid financial backgrounds. But it is, in terms of how APM consider it, it's a separate role, and there is a role profile for portfolio managers at different levels. And the key thing to think about at portfolio level is what techniques and processes will help you to control and deliver the change that your organization is trying to make. And there are various things that are out there in terms of qualifications, such as management of portfolios. There's a whole set of competencies related to portfolio management in the competence framework. PMI have their body of knowledge, which talks about portfolio management. And many of you will be familiar about the link between setting vision, mission, and strategy and the portfolio of different change initiatives and transformation programs that you have. The next level down, if you like, is the program management. And as I've said, I've been a program manager for a couple of years and have good experiences of the sorts of things that really matter in terms of change management. There is a strong overlap in the program management space between what change managers do and what program managers do. Although people typically think of program managers as delivery focused, but there is a strong overlap. And in fact, many organizations have change professionals working alongside project management professionals to ensure that there's, not just delivering systems, technologies, processes, that people know how to use them as well, and that these are the right things to do in terms of embedding that type of change. There are a range of different tools and techniques, and the body of knowledge and the competence framework look at those. But ultimately, I think it's a very interesting and evolving area, and certainly change practitioners are all the time contributing more and more to how we understand the particular role of program managers. And as I said, transformation is a key thing for me. A lot of the stuff that I've been doing recently has been focusing on not just doing stuff, but doing stuff that actually makes a difference, and thinking about how people very senior in the organization play a part in that. They can't detach themselves from what's going on, and it's all about them being visible and being able to kind of think about the stages as organizations go through those transformations. And here's one model, which is Kotter's 8 steps model, but there are a range of different things that are out there, such as ProSki and others that change professionals would use. And certainly if you're familiar with MSP, there are various things in there that talk about tranches and talk about transition management, and actually facilitating change in the way that makes a difference. And then of course there's project management, and a range of people are doing project management even though they're not called project managers. The number of people I've assessed at RPP and for APM that come in without having an actual project management title is actually astounding, but they are doing project management and they're seeking to be accredited for what they do. Projects deliver outputs which have benefits, and obviously these benefits contribute to the outcomes that the programs are trying to deliver. There are a range of tools and techniques and soft skills that are really important for what people do. And there are also a whole range of project management qualifications that are out there. And I'm sure many of you have had to make decisions about, who adopts what and what kind of skill sets and certifications should be there. There's the Prince 2s, there's things like DSDM and all the Agile suite of qualifications that are out there. And there are, lots and lots of different opportunities for people to become qualified as project managers. And the body of knowledge is not specific about which certifications and qualifications you need. It focuses more on the principles and the concepts that are important in terms of effective delivery of projects. So to focus on governance of project management, one of the key things that I'm going to be talking about is assurance, but assurance doesn't sit in isolation. It is part of the big piece of governance, and governance of project management is defined as the set of policies, regulations, etc., that define the establishment, management and control of projects. So the sorts of things that iCoTech are helping people to do is all about trying to improve governance, and governance in a nutshell is doing the right things. The guidance from APM on this is all about directing projects, and there are 4 key components to that: portfolio direction, project sponsorship, project management capability, as well as disclosure and reporting. And there are 11 principles, which I'll run through very quickly, which are all about trying to help avoid failure and facilitate success. But one of the key things to remember here is that governance is accountable for establishing fit-for-purpose mechanisms to undertake assurance. Not having appropriate assurance in the organization is the fault of governance, and not having appropriate governance in place. And here are the principles that are within the document. The board is responsible for governance of project management, and roles and responsibilities are clearly defined. The key thing is that we think about governance throughout the life cycle. So it's not just something that we set up at the beginning and forget about. We think about what's happening to our projects and programs and how we control, what kind of mechanisms we need to put in place to monitor, and what kind of interventions we need to have to make effective decisions as we're delivering our change initiatives. We think about the relationship between business strategy and the portfolio. Are we delivering what the organization wants in terms of change? And we need to have clear plans with clear decision points. And certainly project boards or program boards, or however you've configured your governance, should be in place to think about things like RAG status or gates or whatever mechanisms you need to provide approvals. And this links into strategic funding, this links into strategic decisions, and business as usual is clearly aligned with your governance. We need to have effective delegation of decision making, and I've experienced certain organizations where decisions don't get made because they have to wait for a board, and by the time the board actually meets, the opportunity to actually deliver the change for which you've invested a lot of time, energy, effort and money has been missed. So is your board accountable for governance and making sure these things are in place? Obviously, business cases are really, really important, and making sure that they're valid and that you're not trying to deliver pet projects or vanity projects or things that, are not adding value to the organization. and independent scrutiny is planned and implemented. I've highlighted that because it's really important that from an assurance point of view that the board takes responsibility for that. Clearly defined reporting and escalation, and certainly there are mechanisms that you can automate in terms of dashboards and monitoring what the various projects are doing, and an open and honest reviews and a culture of improvement, making sure that, you know, as things are going along, that there's objective decision making, objective scrutiny, so that progress can be monitored in a way that allows the governance to work. And certainly appropriate engagement of stakeholders is a really important piece, making sure that, you know, our partners, our customers are all part and parcel of what we do in terms of delivering change, because it's not always just about the organization, it's the people that we're working with. And certainly APM have a guide for co-direction of projects and how you'd work with others in terms of setting up your governance. So how is your board structured to make this work, and how could it be enhanced and improved to ensure that all of those various principles are adhered to? In terms of avoiding failure, well, there's no guarantee that the projects and programs will be successful, but obviously the more that we do to enhance our governance and improve our assurance will help to avoid failure. And some of the things that we would think about there is strategic direction, ownership and leadership, stakeholder engagement, the sorts of things that, you know, we think about all the time. With Halloween just around the corner, one of the most interesting things for me is obviously if things go horribly wrong, then we might need to have project recovery activities, and ultimately what I would like to affectionately call a project autopsy, but you'd probably think of as a post-project or post-program review. But it's a very spooky, terrifying experience to, you know, sit there and think about how did we end up where we are now? Why did things go wrong? What could we have done differently? And, you know, there's an often a culture of blame. There's a lot of things that we could have put in place before we ended up there that would certainly have avoided it happening. And, you know, kind of if we were focusing during the delivery phases on some of the long-term values by using assurance or other mechanisms, perhaps we would not have ended up where we did. Assurance itself is the other side of governance, which is not just doing the right things, but doing things right. And one of the questions that has been kind of posed to lots of organizations is what do they do and how do they put in place mechanisms to ensure that a project's health can be measured? And APM have provided, I remember it being kind of first mooted in around about 2009-10, lots of discussions, but they've put together a toolkit for assurance, which has a range of different assessment vehicles, which presumably iCoTech and others are using as part of their measures to look at what you do in your organizations, what sorts of controls you have in place, and what are the steps for an assessment. And it's very detailed in terms of planning for the assessments, gathering the evidence, ensuring that ratings are fair and appropriate, and making decisions for improving the organization and improving the kind of the project mechanisms so that the projects can be more successful. And here are some of those criteria, if you like. There are 10 of them. So client and scope, and looking at kind of the high level client requirements, what requirements analysis is in place, objectives, success criteria, business cases. That whole piece is really, really important, because if you haven't got that right, then you're onto a hiding to nothing, really. Also looking at how you manage your risks and your opportunities throughout the life cycle of the project, thinking about your planning and your scheduling and what sorts of mechanisms you have for your organization to deliver, thinking about the organizational capability and culture, which is looking at people, their qualifications, their behaviors, your teams, the systems and how they work together in the environment, thinking about your supply chain and your procurement processes, in digital projects particularly, because you're dealing with people who have particular skills. Your supply chain involves other parties or other contractors, and how that all fits together to deliver what you need is really, really important. We're also thinking about the solutions themselves and the sorts of technology that you might be using and whether they're fit for purpose. That's either products or services, and the impact that that would have on the social, physical, and economic environment. So thinking about, you know, solutions is a competence in itself within the APM framework, but solutions development is a key part of delivering change. Finance, obviously, kind of budgets, commercial management, administration, some of the legal implications involved in that. Social responsibility and sustainability, so thinking about project delivery impact in a number of different contexts, as well as health and safety. Then performance, in terms of measuring the various things that we have set in terms of our baselines, variance, management action, and a lot of the iCoTech dashboards will be allowing you to do things in a way that make this a lot easier than this has been possible in the past. And ultimately, governance is part of assurance, making sure that the needs you have feed back so that decisions are made when they're needed, and that sponsors are involved, and that stakeholders are engaged, and that everybody knows what's happening in terms of the change initiatives that you have in place. So that's a quick run through the kind of the toolkit, but there's a lot more to it. And, there's a whole set of criteria that would be used if you were doing a full proper assurance audit. Independent assurance is actually a competence within APM's competence framework, and I'll show you some of the competencies in a second, but it is about gathering independent evidence from the change initiative that's valid and that makes it clear that the change initiative is likely to achieve its aims. Key things there are that stakeholders are confident that things are happening the way that they should be, and it makes it clear in the statement that this is carried out independently of those involved in delivering the change initiative. So independent assurance is a requirement as a competence. It's not a nice to have. It's something that, marking your homework is not something that we would be comfortable with. It's about getting a second pair of eyes and external input to say that what you're delivering is appropriate. That doesn't necessarily mean somebody from outside the organization. It could be somebody from somewhere else within the organization, but it is very much separate from the quality assurance activities that your organization would be carrying out anyway. And quality assurance is a competence in itself, competence 13 within the competence framework. That's the competence framework for you, and there are 27 in there, and I've highlighted the three that we've been talking about, which is governance arrangements, independent assurance, and I'm going to touch upon benefits management in a second. But you can see quality management is also a competence. If you think about role profiles, every job, project, portfolio, program has a set of different role profiles to it. So depending whether you're an associate or an intermediate or what level you are, you can be a very senior project manager compared to a very junior one. For each of those role profiles, there are these 27 competencies sitting in the background, but the extent or the level to which they're used does vary. And a lot of energy and effort working with the industry, with project professionals, with organizations to put these together took place over a number of years. And these role profiles are being used now in terms of making sure that the competence and the capability that you need are in place. And certainly the qualifications and the certifications that APM use are built on the back of these 27 competencies. It's actually been reduced because the RPP, when it came out, had 47. So they've been kind of refined over a period of time, but it's all about making sure that people understand what they need to know in each of the different roles. And clearly governance, assurance, and benefits management are a key part of portfolio management and some of the more senior project professional roles that are out there. And there are also, obviously, I haven't talked about PMO, but there are PMO role profiles as well that are a key part of the mix. The PMO is an interesting one, and certainly, as iCoTech have said, that they have a PMO consultancy that enables organizations to decide what they need. APM have found this quite a challenging area because there are a range of different types of PMO that could be in place. Some are more strategic, which focus on portfolio management and strategy, and others are more about support and offering kind of more of the communication, compliance, and configuration activities. And also, let's not forget that PMOs include business analysts. They include people who are project support and administration. The question has always been asked is, does the PMO actually add value, or is it just a necessary evil to ensure that, quality assurance is in place and that we're on track? Certainly some of the automated systems are going to make a huge difference in terms of ensuring that you've got the information that you need when you need it to make the appropriate decisions and to control your projects. But, I have seen increasingly PMOs become more strategic and actually drive the portfolio activities, which then has an impact on the decisions made at board level about what's capable, what can be done. The PMO is not just the single point of truth, but it has a much more strategic role. But as I said, there are lots and lots of different models, and what the PMO could do varies. There's one academic author who actually comes from PMI, so I'm not being APM biased today, but certainly the PMOs are either supporting, controlling, or directing the organization's business change initiatives. And there are a whole range of different models that, not just keeping the templates that people should be using, not just focusing on the policies. They also have a significant role in terms of training and development, making sure that your project management professionals have the right skills and the qualifications to do their jobs, they have the right resources, and that they have the right processes in place to make sure that everything fits together. However, some organizations view PMOs with a great deal of concern, and they think it's like Big Brother watching you. They are a necessary evil, and once you get past the PMO, everything's hunky-dory. So, it is a challenging thing for people to think about what the PMO is actually doing within the organization and how it works. To try and pull all of this together, I'm aware that many of you will be familiar with Agile project delivery and will have maybe done the Agile project management qualifications that are out there, but certainly kind of, Scrums, sprints, and the whole Agile methodologies that are out there focus very much on rapid delivery of systems that can be tested and are in place. And so that pace of change is really, really fundamental, particularly with digital transformations. But if we focus on the right-hand side, we always need to have in place our vision, our objectives, and our benefits, which come from a strategic level. We need to understand as an organization our to-be state, fully cognizant of the fact that there is an as-is state. So there are things that are in the external environment, there are stakeholders' needs and their interests, and there are a number of cultural factors in terms of what our organization does and how it works that all contribute to resistance to change, people not wanting to be on board with particular aspects, how you can kind of engage and consult with people. It's a very challenging environment to get from as is to be, but at the same time, we're rapidly developing systems to actually make that happen. So we need to be very clear on the difference between what business change is and what transformative change is. And often they are incorporated in the same things because our IT guys are just delivering stuff. Yeah, you give them things to do and they'll get it done as quickly as they possibly can based on the resources that they have, the time that they have. So business realization management is a key part of assurance, but also strategic assurance to make sure that you are actually delivering things that are enabling the change that you want and are delivering the benefits that you hope and anticipate. And if we look at that from a kind of a strategic alignment perspective, which is where the board comes in, well, we need to understand our environment. And at this moment in time, obviously, we have COVID, which is a massive disruptor. We have Brexit around the corner. We have a range of different economic conditions that might affect what we do. And that's either going to be a risk or an opportunity, but it's all about focusing our strategic goals on what we invest in terms of our change initiatives. And that links into portfolio level in terms of the programs that we have in there, which are going to be transformative, or they might be just business changed driven, more business performance improvement activities. So the kind of configurations of portfolios is really, really interesting in terms of how we do that. And then obviously those objectives fit into the programs and projects that we deliver. And then those ultimately end up in outcomes and outputs. And the PMO is sat there optimizing. Okay, it's another O for you on the kind of the objectives, outcomes, outputs, optimizing. But is it kind of this big Sauron-like Big Brother entity watching and controlling things and not allowing things to drift? Or is it more focused on the benefits? And that's where independent assurance comes in and plays a really, really important role, because that objective view allows you to think about where the value is being added to the organization and thinking about, kind of, are not just the systems and the processes in place, but are the actual programs that you're doing going to deliver the actual benefits that you want? And having that important discussion and conversation with the PMO and with the portfolio and with the board to align all of that so the benefits can actually be delivered on time, on budget, and that everybody's happy. So to kind of draw this together and to kind of conclude, it's not just about business change, it's about transformative change. And for me, that is about sustainable change, which involves both processes, but also people, and people need to be qualified and capable. And as we're dealing with, a very disruptive environment where technology is changing, the guidance is changing all the time, we need to be on top of the innovations that are out there. It's all about having the right structure to enable the strategies that you want. And that includes our organizational structure and how our board is configured and what the sponsors are doing and how they're involved and how our delivery teams are configured and how that all works together to kind of collaborate, often bringing in external expertise to deliver the things that we want at a time when it's timely and able to deliver those benefits. For some organizations, it's an evolution, so they're very mature, and it's about, you know, configuring their systems and their processes to deliver. Whereas for others, it's a radical shift. It's a real revolution in terms of thinking. And all transformation is effectively a journey. And there's certainly sort of the experiences that I've had is like kind of, you know, some people are very good at this in terms of taking the organization with them and delivering the change. And others are finding it a lot more difficult because of the resistance, because of the culture. And that's why change professionals are a key part of the, you know, effective delivery mechanisms to make sure that the systems that we deliver are used and used in the way that we want them to actually deliver the benefits that we'd hoped for in the first place. And as project managers and project professionals, it's all about communication, coordination, and control. But understanding that a lot of that now is being automated, and that kind of we need to work with the technology available to us to make things go more smoothly. Are we nearly there yet? Well, obviously in the background at board level, people will be looking at things like critical success factors, key performance indicators, return on investment, budget, time, etc. And that decision making needs to feed in as rapidly as possible to the actual delivery people. But ultimately, kind of, you know, nobody's brilliant at it until they've had the opportunity to become more mature, and that's about learning lessons, and that's often about working with others to highlight where there are problems and where there are opportunities. And that takes me to my final slide, which is very much summarizing what I've been talking about. I have a habit of talking quickly. I apologize for that, but you know, hopefully you've captured the gist of what I've been trying to say. To summarize, governance and assurance must work together to deliver success and realize intended benefits. They are two sides of the same coin, but governance is ultimately responsible for ensuring that assurance is in place to make it all work. And independent assurance is not just a nice to have, it is a part of the competence framework. You need to have people who are able and capable to make decisions on what's going on that are not going to be conflicted or not going to be suffering from bias or not have a different agenda to what would help the initiatives to be successful. Audit is much better than autopsy. And take it from me, who sat in on a couple of these project autopsies, but that is not a nice situation to be in. And the earlier you can bring in people to start working with you on looking at your systems and your processes and your controls is a good thing. Independent assurance can offer greater scrutiny and confidence than purely intentional measures. And as I've said, PMOs are varying in what they do and how well they engage, but they do tend to become, you know, bad cop ultimately, unless you've got, you know, other people around to say, well, yeah, actually they're there to help and support and develop, and they're not just there to kind of stop you from doing things when you want to be doing them. And ultimately, assurance tools and expertise are there to add the value when appropriately integrated with other project activities. The tools are definitely out there, but, you know, as Jill Hancock, who's a professional standards manager at APM, says, you know, a fool with a tool is still a fool. And, you know, the tools that can only work if the people are experienced at actually using them and can make them work for you. So that summarizes and brings to an end. Those are the references that I've kind of alluded to. What I'm now going to do is unshare my screen, and we'll have a discussion, and I'll take any questions that you might have about what I've been talking about.